Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 45b, top of the page, with continuing from the idea of the clarification of the Braita, if it was in accordance with Rabbi Meir, the opinion of Rabbi Meir or not, and it was said in the bottom of 45a, if it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, top of 45b now, with the words Damar Sofer Kishomer Chinam Dami, who says, the opinion of Rabbi Meir is that he says that a renter is considered like an unpaid bailee with regard to his responsibility for rented item. Let it teach that bailies, that shomrim, are liable to compensate the owner, with the exception of an unpaid bailee and renter. Just a little comment here that he spelled bailee Bailey. I believe it's English Gematria 54, and shomer is Gematria 540 if you just spell it with shin mem resh. So 54 is clearly visibly connected to 540. It's a connection between the English and the Hebrew Gematria. Bailey, spelled Bailey, and shomer, spelled like shamar. And if it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a renter is considered like a paid bailee, let it teach with the exception of unpaid bailee, as it in fact states. But it should also state that in a case where the oxen are forewarned, all of them are exempt, except with regard to ransom. Rabbi Yehuda says in the next Mishnah that a forewarned ox requires a only reduced level of safeguarding. Therefore, this Braita does not appear to be in accordance with the opinion of either Tana. Rav Huna bar Chinana said, in accordance with whose opinion is this Braita? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that an ox has no sufficient safeguarding at all other than slaughtering it with a knife. In other words, there is no degree of safeguarding that exempts the ox's owner, or in the context of the Braita, the bailee, from liability if the ox causes damage or kills. And with regard to a renter, the Braita holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says the renter is considered like a paid bailee. Abaye said, actually, the Braita is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, and it is Rabba bar Avu reversed. It is as Rabba bar Avu reversed the two opinions and thought, how does a renter pay? In other words, what is his degree of responsibility? Rabbi Meir says, like a paid bailee. Rabbi Yehuda says, like an unpaid bailee. Rabbi Elazar says, if the owner conveyed his ox to an unpaid bailee, if the ox caused damage, the bailee is liable to pay damages, but if the ox was injured, he is exempt. The sages said, what are the circumstances? If Rabbi Elazar was referring to a bailee who accepted responsibility upon himself regarding it from causing damage, even if the ox was injured, he should be liable. And if he was referring to a bailee who did not accept responsibility for regarding it from causing damage, even if it causes damage, he should be exempt from payment. Rava said, actually, Rabbi Elazar was referring to a case where he accepted responsibility upon himself for regarding it from causing damage. But here we are dealing with a case where the bailee recognized that the ox was a goring ox, and in that case, the normal way of things is that the bailee accepted upon himself responsibility for safeguarding it so that it would not go and injure others, since he knew that it was dangerous. But it presumably did not enter his mind that other oxen would come and injure it. Therefore, he did not accept responsibility for safeguarding against such an occurrence. New Mishnah, Kashro Balav Bimosera. If the ox's owner tied it with reins to a fence or locked the gate before it, in an appropriate manner. But nevertheless, the ox emerged and caused damage. Whether the ox is innocuous or forewarned, the owner is liable, since this is not considered sufficient precaution to prevent damage. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the ox is innocuous ox, innocuous, the owner is liable even if he safeguarded it appropriately, since the Torah does not limit the required safeguarding for an innocuous ox. But if the ox was forewarned, the owner is exempt from paying compensation for damage, as it is stated in the verse describing damage by a forewarned ox, and the owner has not secured it. Exodus 21:36. And this ox that was tied with reins or behind a locked gate was secured. Rabbi Eliezer says an ox has no sufficient safeguarding at all, other than slaughtering it with a knife. There is no degree of safeguarding that exempts the ox's owner from liability. Gemara. What is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Meir? He holds that ordinary oxen are not presumed to be under safeguarding, as their owners do not ordinarily safeguard them. And the Merciful One stated in the Torah that one will be liable even for damage caused by an innocuous ox, inasmuch as it requires at least a reduced level of safeguarding, such as with reins. The Merciful One then stated with regard to a forewarned ox, and the owner has not secured it, to indicate that it is not sufficient to provide it only with a reduced level of safeguarding, as it requires superior safeguarding. And Rabbi Meir derives this requirement with regard to an innocuous ox from a verbal analogy between the term goring stated with regard to an innocuous ox and the term goring stated with regard to a forewarned ox. In both cases, superior safeguarding is required, otherwise the owner is liable. By contrast, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the ordinary oxen are presumed to be under some reduced level of safeguarding. Since the Merciful One stated, nevertheless, that even for damage caused by an innocuous ox, the owner will pay, it may be inferred that it requires superior safeguarding. The Merciful One then states with regard to a forewarned ox, and the owner has not secured it, emphasizing again that one must provide it with superior safeguarding. This constitutes one amplification following another amplification, and the principle is that an amplification following an amplification is stated only in order to restrict its extent. Accordingly, the verse excludes the requirement of superior safeguarding with regard to a forewarned ox, and therefore reduced safeguarding is sufficient to exempt the owner from liability. And if you would say that through the verbal analogy between the term goring stated with regard to an innocuous ox and the term goring stated with regard to a forewarned ox, the Torah compares their halachot, nevertheless, the Merciful One restricted this halacha by emphasizing, and the owner has not secured it, referring specifically to it, a forewarned ox, and not to the other. In other words, innocuous ox. The Gemara asks, but isn't this phrase necessary for the negative, the law of statement, that if the owner does not provide superior safeguarding, he is liable? The Gemara answers, if that is so, let the Merciful One write, and the owner has not secured. What is the purpose of the added emphasis, and the owner has not secured it? It is to indicate that the restriction of this halacha relates specifically to it, a forewarned ox, and not to the other, which is the innocuous ox. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Echad tam v'echad muad sheshamru shmira pechusa pater. It is taught in a Braita that there is a fourth opinion. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says in the case of both an innocuous ox and a forewarned ox, in which its owner provided reduced safeguarding, he is exempt from liability. The Gemara asks, what is the reason for his opinion? He holds in accordance with the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the reduced safeguarding is sufficient for a forewarned ox, and he derives from the verbal analogy between the term goring stated with regard to an innocuous ox and the term goring stated with regard to a forewarned ox, that just as reduced safeguarding is sufficient for a forewarned ox, it is sufficient for an innocuous ox as well. Rabbi Ada bar Ahava said Rabbi Yehuda deemed only the forewarned element of the ox exempt. Rabbi Yehuda's ruling that reduced safeguarding is sufficient to exempt the owner of a forewarned ox relates only to the additional half of the damage that is paid for a forewarned ox beyond the half of the damage that one is liable to pay for an innocuous ox, but the liability for its element of innocuousness remains in place. Therefore, if the owner did not provide superior safeguarding for the forewarned ox, he is still liable to pay half the cost of the damage as he would if it were innocuous. Rav says if an ox is forewarned with regard to goring with its right horn, it is not thereby forewarned with regard to goring with its left horn. The sages said, in accordance with whose opinion is Rav's statement? If it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, doesn't Rabbi Meir say that both an innocuous ox and a forewarned ox require superior safeguarding? If it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, why did he state that an ox still has innocuous elements, specifically with regard to the left horn? Even with regard to the right horn itself, it has both elements. It has the element of innocuousness, and it has also the element of a forewarned element. The sages said actually, Rav's statement is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as he does not hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Ada bar Ahava that the ox's innocuous element remains. And this is what he is saying. You find an element of both innocuousness and of a forewarned status in the same ox, specifically in a case like this, where an ox is forewarned with regard to one horn, but not with regard to the other.